Today is Tuesday, August 19th. We're talking about crucial negotiations at the White House and what still needs to happen before Ukraine sees peace. Also, we'll tell you what a former attorney general told Congress about the so-called Epstein files. Plus, President Trump wants voting to be different for the midterms. Another ad campaign is facing backlash, and words like skibidi and delulu have made it into the dictionary. Those stories and even more news coming up. Welcome to The Newsworthy. All the day's news in around 10 minutes. Fast, fair, fun, and on the go. I'm Erica Mandy. Thanks so much for being here. You ready? Let's do this. President Trump hosted Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky and several of Europe's most powerful leaders at the White House. And since that meeting, Trump says he also spoke once again with Russia's President Vladimir Putin and started arranging a meeting between Putin and Zelensky. Of course, that's a critical step toward possibly bringing an end to Russia's war in Ukraine. But there are still a lot of issues that need to be worked out. For example, rewarding Ukraine's borders and the timing of a ceasefire. At this point, it's not clear what either side is willing to concede on those issues. Russia believes it's entitled to land that Ukraine is not willing to give up, and Ukraine is demanding an immediate ceasefire that Russia won't agree to ahead of more talks. But the Trump administration says it's going to keep the conversation going. Yesterday's Oval Office meeting between Trump and Zelensky was much more cordial than their last one 6 months ago, when Trump criticized Zelensky for not being thankful enough for America's support. Well, this time Zelensky wore a black suit instead of his usual military attire, and he thanked Trump several times. The European leaders also praised Trump, and they spoke about offering Ukraine crucial NATO privileges without actual membership. Trump was also open to some kind of security guarantees for Ukraine, though for now there aren't many details. And a statement from Russia's government made it clear Russia would reject any NATO troops in Ukraine. So expect all of that to come up in future talks. President Trump says within a week or two, he'll know whether Ukraine will see peace or if the fighting will continue. In the Middle East, Qatar and Egypt are still trying to move ceasefire talks along in Gaza. And yesterday, Egyptian officials said there was some progress, that Hamas agreed to a deal to stop the fighting for 60 days. The terror group would also have to return half of the Israeli hostages still being held in Gaza, and Israel would have to release some Palestinian prisoners. So far, no official response from Israel. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu just says reports of Hamas accepting a proposal shows how the terror group is under massive pressure, so his campaign is working. News outlets like the BBC and Reuters cite sources who say the latest ceasefire proposal was very similar to one the U.S. suggested that Israel had accepted last month. So it's possible Israel accepts this one, too. Meanwhile, Gaza's health ministry says the Palestinian death toll after 22 months of war has surpassed 62,000. It doesn't distinguish between fighters and civilians, but it does say about half of those who've been killed were women and children. If a deal is not reached soon, Israel's cabinet is expected to approve the military's plan to occupy Gaza City later this week. It's something that sparked worldwide protests, but President Trump supports it. He posted on social media that the only way hostages will be returned is if Hamas is confronted and destroyed, or as he put it, quote, play to win or don't play at all. Stay tuned. Members of Congress are expected to start getting the Epstein files this week. A House Republican leader says he got the heads up from the Justice Department. And that could mark a turning point following weeks of backlash ever since the DOJ tried to end the Epstein case without releasing any new information. Now, this release is in response to a subpoena that demanded the department turn over all records related to its investigation of sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. The House Oversight Committee also subpoenaed several former government officials, including former Attorney General Bill Barr. He sat for a closed-door deposition yesterday. Lawmakers say he answered every question and was very transparent. But Barr apparently told them he did not know anything about an Epstein client list and that as Attorney General, he never saw any evidence that might implicate President Trump in any of Epstein's crimes. The committee also issued subpoenas to 10 other high-profile officials who had either investigated or been associated with Jeffrey Epstein, including former President Bill Clinton. So other depositions are expected soon. The U.S. Air Force is losing its top uniformed officer who announced he's going to retire early. General David Alvin plans to retire this fall, 2 years into a 4-year term. The Washington Post cites sources who say the Pentagon under Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth wanted to replace him. So far, it's not clear who it will replace him with. This is actually just the latest early departure of a high-ranking general under President Trump. The Trump administration already got rid of the Joint Chiefs Chairman, the Chief of Naval Operations, the Coast Guard Commandant, top lawyers for the Army, Navy, and Air Force, and so on. As of this morning, no comment from the Pentagon. All right, we have much more news for you still coming up in just a moment. But first, a quick break to thank our sponsor. Working from home means lunch is often an afterthought, but lately I've been looking forward to it thanks to Cook Unity. Instead of scavenging the fridge or settling just for a snack, I can grab a fresh, ready-to-eat meal crafted by an award-winning chef. One day I had quinoa-crusted salmon that felt like a restaurant dish, but it was ready in minutes. Another day it was a Moroccan chickpea and feta bowl with flavors I never would have been able to whip up on my own. Every meal is fresh, never frozen. In fact, chefs handpick their ingredients so you get seasonal, high-quality food that balances flavor and nutrition. Meals are delivered fully cooked. I heat them up in as little as 5 minutes in the oven or microwave, and then I enjoy high-quality meals for a fraction of restaurant or takeout prices. I appreciate that even on my busiest days, I know a delicious meal is waiting in the fridge, ready in 5 minutes. Fuel your day with the freshest, best-tasting meal delivery made by award-winning chefs. Go to cookunity.com/newsworthyfree or enter code newsworthyfree before checkout for free premium meals for life. That's free premium meals for life by using code newsworthyfree or going to cookunity.com/newsworthyfree. Now, back to the news. Hurricane Erin is growing and becoming more intense. And even though it's still not expected to make a direct hit on land, forecasters are warning of life-threatening rip currents and surf conditions along the entire East Coast today, all the way from Florida to Canada. So meteorologists are reminding beachgoers the ocean is not safe, even if weather is pleasant on the shore. Dozens of people had to be rescued from the waters yesterday. And in some areas, the weather on the shore is expected to get pretty bad too. In fact, there are evacuation orders in effect for North Carolina's Outer Banks as officials warn of tropical storm conditions and possible flooding. That could start tonight and last through Thursday. President Trump says he's on a mission to bring honesty to next year's midterm elections. And as part of that mission, he's promising to end mail-in voting, calling it a fraud. Trump also says he's going to target voting machines since he calls them highly inaccurate. To do this, the president says an executive order is being written right now. But even before Trump's order is officially released, it's causing some pushback. Like with mail-in voting, many state elections officials say it's the best way to make sure everyone has a chance to vote, even if they live in rural areas, are disabled, or can't make it to the polls for some other reason. But Russian President Putin told Trump mail-in ballots led to his defeat in 2020. The U.S. intelligence community has determined Putin tried to influence the last 3 presidential elections but did not succeed. As for voting machines, they've consistently shown to be accurate as long as the proper procedures are followed. Now, speaking of voting machines, the conservative cable channel Newsmax agreed to a settlement with the voting technology company Dominion Voting Systems. In a lawsuit, Dominion accused Newsmax of spreading false claims about the company's voting tech, saying it had been manipulated to help President Biden beat President Trump in 2020. Though remember, several investigations and court rulings found no widespread fraud. And now they've settled the lawsuit, with the Newsmax agreeing to pay $67 million. Dominion also received a $787 million settlement from Fox News over its election coverage. Federal regulators are suing ticket resellers who apparently made it more expensive to see popular concerts. The FTC says Key Investment Group used a network of fake accounts to bypass Ticketmaster's security protocols. And with that, it was able to grab hundreds of thousands of tickets to tours for artists like Taylor Swift and Bruce Springsteen. Then they allegedly resold the tickets for millions of dollars on sites like TotalTickets.com, Totally Tix, Front Rows Tix, and more. The FTC says the operation included illegal software that masked IP addresses, repurposed credit cards and SIM cards, and more. The agency is now seeking damages. In response, Key Investment Group defends itself, saying the secondary ticket market is a legitimate business that's not illegal. Either way, the FTC says this is just part of its mission to make sure real fans have an opportunity to buy tickets at fair prices. Ticketmaster itself is also under federal scrutiny. Remember, the FTC under President Biden sued Ticketmaster's parent company, Live Nation, accusing it of having a monopoly on the live events industry. It's not clear at this point if the FTC under President Trump is still pursuing that case, but Ticketmaster is not accused of wrongdoing in this latest suit. Watchmaker Swatch is now apologizing for a controversial ad campaign. The ads featured images of an Asian model pulling the corners of his eyes up and back. The images were widely condemned online, especially in China, where critics say the pose resembled the racist slanted eye pose that's historically been used to mock Asians. Swatch says it took note of those concerns and said sorry for any distress it may have caused. So far, it's not clear if this controversy could impact sales in countries like China. But either way, it's just the latest setback for Swatch that's also facing new tariffs in the U.S. and a slowdown in sales. 6,000 new words were just added to the Cambridge Dictionary, including some that have gained a lot of traction online. For example, skibidi. That's basically gibberish. It can mean cool or bad, or it can be used with no meaning at all, just as a joke. Other additions include tradwife, which is short for traditional wife, referring to a married mother who cooks, cleans, and posts on social media. Plus, there's delulu, which is a shortened version of the word delusional. Many of the new words are tied to social media, since that's how most young people communicate. But others, like delulu, actually have been used in some communities for years. It's just that they've caught on more recently, and they might be here to stay. All of these words were added because Cambridge believes they have staying power. That's it for the main news today, so now it's time for Trivia Tuesday, when we ask a different trivia question every week. But first, this episode is sponsored by OneSkin. As we head into fall, I'm focusing on routines that help me feel healthy and confident every day. One product line that's become a big part of that is OneSkin. I started using their face and eye products, including the SPF, and they quickly became staples for me. They're hydrating, light, and I love knowing the formulas are backed by science. And now I've also added their OS1 Hair Scalp Serum to my routine. It's about giving my hair and scalp the best support to stay healthy and thick as I get older. I like how easy it is to use and how light it feels. It fits right in with the rest of my routine. OneSkin scientists developed the OS1 peptide, clinically proven to target aging at the cellular level. That same innovation powers both their skincare and hair products. OneSkin is the world's first skin longevity company. By focusing on the cellular aspects of aging, OneSkin keeps your skin looking and acting younger for longer. For a limited time, you can try OneSkin with 15% off using the code NEWSWORTHY at oneskin.co. That's a 15% off discount at oneskin.co with the code NEWSWORTHY. After your purchase, they'll ask you where you heard about them, so please support our show and tell them we sent you. Now back to Trivia Tuesday. Today's trivia question is, was the Leaning Tower of Pisa ever straight? Listen again next Tuesday for the answer and explanation. As for last week's trivia question, which former president liked to conduct meetings in the bathroom? The answer is President Lyndon B. Johnson. The president was known for a method of persuasion called the Johnson treatment that was up close and often aggressive. One of his most common tactics was inviting people into the bathroom with him, often leaving the door wide open. President LBJ also had phones installed in all the White House staff bathrooms so he could get a hold of his aides even when they used the facilities. And his eccentricities were not all toilet-related. He once took all of his clothes off while conducting an interview with reporters on Air Force One, continuing the conversation as normal. In a famous moment, LBJ showed off his surgery scars during a press conference. Johnson also invited aides into the White House bedroom to discuss business while he was in bed with his wife. Of course, LBJ was not only known for his eccentricities. Many key events from his presidency have changed American history forever, like the Vietnam War and the Civil Rights Revolution. Well, thank you so much for joining us to get caught up on the news today. Of course, we'll be back tomorrow with the latest to know. Until then, have a great day.